Now, if you just played Apex for the first time in your life, you might be looking at all these new legends. You might see Loba, you might see Revenant, maybe Wraith looks cool, Mirage got some changes, and you may look at Lifeline and say, you know, I kind of remember this character. You know, the Mozambique, the meme that kind of was season 1, she was one of the featured characters. What happened to her? Well, Lifeline's been around. She's been doing pretty well in a lot of different areas, but she's been desperately talked about for a buff in the last season and over the last few months. And in season 5, she got an indirect buff with a gold shield change, which we'll talk about. But the big thing is that we have a buff incoming for Lifeline that one of the lead designers actually talked about on Twitter. And I'm going to go through what this means, what this buff is, and why it's not the traditional buff you think, and where some things could be right and where some things could be wrong here in the reasoning and the thought process, because there is a big difference between sometimes how designers think and sometimes how players think and experience the game. All this is going to be in the video, and obviously, you know, you guys, most of you who watch my channel know I've come from working in the design side of things for about 3 years while working in esports, so having that link to professional and then the game design side of things is kind of one of my favorite things to talk about, because most people don't know what goes on behind the scenes. And hopefully this, if you're a Lifeline main, if you like Apex Legends, will help you to understand what's coming for the character. We'll get some notes on what they're expecting to do to her, but also you guys will learn a little bit in the process. So leave a like, comment down below anything that you find interesting or any comments you think I may be able to answer for you. Carlos starts off by saying, lots of talk about Lifeline buffs. Let me speak to it a little bit. Lifeline is in a complicated spot. Despite the claims that she is in dire need of a buff, the data says she remains top tier across different categories, e.g. pick rate, win rate, KDR. This first tweet is a part of a thread, so I want to give him the credit of reading the thread, but I will kind of comment on each of these a little bit before continuing to read. This first part is a designer who obviously has access to back-end stats, and if you're part of a game team, what you'll know is that every character movement, from how many times they're picked to how many times they win games, how many times they top 5, how many players play them out of a percentage of other characters, what's their win rate in relationships to other characters, how many, you know, all of those things are essentially what they're going to be looking at on the back end. And a lot of times they look at numbers that way to make tweaks. For instance, when we were in, you know, looking at paladins and smite things and stuff like that, what we would do is we'd look at characters who are underperforming. Like, say, there's a god who's supposed to be really good, just came out, but they're losing 40% of the games that they play. That means that it's now nowhere near that lovely 48 to 52%, which means you're in that reasonable doubt of the player is able to make the difference between whether they win or lose. If it's a 40% win rate, then unfortunately, it's more so the character versus the player. Like, you start off at a worse chance to win. It's not even 50-50 like a coin flip. So he's saying that in pick rate, in win rate, in KDR, she's actually already ahead by the moment that you pick her. Now, there's some interesting factors to this that I will bring up in a bit, but let's lead on to what he talks about. So in that sense, she does not need a buff at all, Carlos continues, but I get it. Everyone wants her to be unique, and I agree she's lost some of her shine due to the other legend buffs, but we can't straight up add power to her. That would drive her even higher in those metrics. Now, most of you, when you look at changes in Apex Legends, you look at things that don't make sense. A lot of times, this is why. I mean, hopefully you guys can get a little bit of a like, hey, oh my, the curtain's pulled back. Why did they buff this? Why did they change that? This was already pretty good? And part of it is because in these metrics, they are performing at a lower rate than they should to get to that kind of middle mark where they're balanced amongst the community of other things they're comparing to. On the flip side, if something's overperforming, that's why you may see a nerf continually, why we've seen maybe successive Wraith nerfs, because she might have been continually overperforming despite every nerf they had done to her thus far. Same thing for Gibraltar as well, why he kept getting those buffs. So this could give you a little bit of a look inside to say, okay, man, this is maybe why that they're doing it. They have these stats. This is what's telling them, you know, we need to make this character a little bit more, I think, balanced in comparison to the other cast of characters. But it gets really interesting because this isn't just it. This is one way to look at it, and here's where we got into a lot of conversations with my buddy who I was always working with, who we were always having these meetings about design. Sometimes characters in these metrics who were underperforming in certain areas were actually overperforming in competitive. For instance, we had a character who had a hook. named Makoa. And if you've played Overwatch, you know Roadhog, right? This character would statistically be on the lower end of all of these metrics. Makoa would actually be like a 45% in casual, right? But in competitive, in high level play, this character would have a 60% win rate. And so the balancing conversation was, well, we kind of want to buff Makoa for our casual base of players. But the problem is we can't buff Makoa because Makoa is winning every single game in competitive play. And if we did that, people would think we're stupid because they don't see what we're seeing on the data end. Does that make sense to you guys? Where they get caught in that tricky situation of, well, most of the audience doesn't know how to do it. But when the good audience of players knows how and they execute it and they abuse this, the win rate is astronomical. And so then they need a nerf. But we can't nerf it if it's already underperforming. Okay, there we go. This is a little bit of Lifeline, but the opposite situation. Let's continue, because this is where Carlos gets into what they're looking to do for Lifeline, and this is a really interesting topic and really cool for design, and where hopefully I want to see you guys interact in the comment section. What we're looking for is a side grade. We want her to be different from other legends without necessarily adding power. That kind of design is much harder to do than just cranking numbers or even just adding a new thing she can do. This side grade term, we're going to talk about it as well. Very unique in just a little bit in the video, but I want to finish what Carlos has to say because this is where we know she is getting some buffs in the future. So be patient. We're working on it, but it's a difficult problem. In the meantime, you could feel better about picking Lifeline knowing you're still in good hands. Okay. Carlos, great thread. I don't interact with Carlos very much. He doesn't follow me on Twitter. I followed him after this post, but obviously they've been doing some great design things over at Respawn. Got nothing but positive things to say. But I think this is a great kind of thing to bring out into the community and talk about and kind of look at from both sides, because pro players and I think other players are looking at several things. One, that Lifeline and her revive isn't as good as Gibraltar's because he can do it fast and in a dome shield. It isn't as good as Mirage's because he could do it while he's invisible. And she's supposed to be the character that's the combat medic. So how is the dude with the big, the big dude with the shield and the bombs, and then the sneaky guy better at rezzing people than the actual combat medic when that's her role? She's also lost a lot of viability when she had that heal that could last within the outside of the zone. But I think it's okay to understand that there's nobody who can just live outside the zone without meds. You kind of stabilize that. You don't think, oh well, you kind of know that there's no other way to do it except meds, so you can kind of expect the time they'd have to spend in there, how many meds they'd have to have, how much they must have used and they can't be having any more, right? A Lifeline would throw all that off, so you could never really know, lead to some bad moments in gameplay. But the truth is, people are saying we need a buffer in those areas. Now, here's I think the biggest problem with this. And when I talk about a side grade, I think this is the right decision to go to. Designers are hesitant to move characters that are already performing in those statistical areas up even higher with strong buffs, especially with numbers, right? More healing, faster res, taking low profile off, right? Those are number changes that are going to have a direct impact statistically and not necessarily impact whether your ability to play the game is separated. And this is where I think a side grade helps. If you could do something like, say, okay, the hook is now on a, say you have 2 charges of that hook. Now you only have 1. Or if you have that hook, and I know this is a number change, but bear with me here. If you make that hook from 5 seconds to 25-second cooldown, right? So essentially, you make it so that if you are great and you hit that hook, it's going to be a kill no matter what. But if you're not good and you just spam that hook, and essentially you try to kill somebody but you miss, you whiff, you're going to be exposed, and that character is not going to be as valuable. So the players who are better at that character, who hit all their hooks, will be getting the same amount of kills pretty much. I mean, they'll be using it, they'll be getting kills, they'll be winning the games. The people who are just abusing an overpowered ability will no longer be able to do that. It won't be as easy. You'll have to actually be good. So it will trend towards higher level of play, still being valuable, but you can balance out the low end for a negative problem like this. For Lifeline, it's a bit harder because the casual end of things is pretty good. But what we don't talk about often enough is that when you look at the casual gameplay, and this is the big point of things like a side grade and what's happening, you don't look at the high level of gameplay from a casual perspective. Like, let's put it this way. That Makoa, because in casuals you don't have as coordinated of an effort with a hook, it's not going to be as good. Like, think about it like this. Like, if I am hooking someone that sets them up for my teammates to kill them, then okay, great. If my teammates are ready to kill them and abuse that, we'll get an instant kill. We'll be 5v4. And if we're good and communicating, we can win a 5v4 every single time. That's what a pro high-level team would do. But in casuals, when everyone's running around, 5 people don't have a mic, one dude's talking to his mom on the phone, one dude's trying to eat lunch while he's playing, you get that hook, nothing happens. No one follows up. You pull an enemy towards you. They all kill you. And then you're like, wait, this isn't even good. And you have a low impact on your win rate and you keep losing. And that is how you get that separation. When you have abilities that are extremely valuable at high end, that pro players abuse, and you have abilities that in low casual areas aren't as good. And in this situation, it's the opposite. You have things where just healing, that is really good. Anything that's a big stat boost, like healing, rezzing faster, rezzing with a shield, being a smaller hitbox, these things will always make a character who has them better than other characters in a static number sense, because you don't have to do anything really to get big value out of those abilities, which Lifeline has. Calling and getting better gear, on average having more gear than other players throughout the totality of 1,000 matches. You will be better geared as a Lifeline essentially because of your care package and all of these things, right? You heal faster. These are things that just put her in a better spot. But the problem is in high level play, see, the exact opposite situation takes place where those things aren't as valuable in these specific situations where they can be either countered very effectively by a coordinated team, abused by a coordinated team as well, and also she doesn't have any lethality beyond to set her team up for success in the current meta of this high level situation, which is why great players who play her are feeling like she can't compete in competitive play. And that is why we're getting this conversation around she can't be played in ranked, she can't be played in the pro league. Why? Because she doesn't have that kind of X factor ability like that hook, which allows you to, yes, even at low levels, it's not that great, but a pro will dominate with it. She doesn't have that yet, but she's got things that are buffing her stats that make everyone who plays her across the board feel really, really good and win more than often. So the designers are now in a conundrum, which hopefully you guys understand is very difficult to get out of, where they are looking at, we cannot buff anything that she already does well because she's already winning more, because people naturally will win with a character who can heal herself faster, who can have her own healing, who can shield people when they're rezzing, which is a big part of the game, and who just constantly gets more loot than everybody else. Okay, yeah, so that character is going to win, duh. But they need to make something valuable for her to impact a high-level competitive game, which is why they're looking to give a side grade. Now, if you can give a side grade that allows Lifeline, and this is where I want you guys in the comment section to talk to me here, and please ignore the gameplay. It was, I've been working all week, so this is just random games in between my breaks when I was doing broadcasts. We just did an ESPN show, by the way. I don't know if you guys caught it. I love you if you did. Thank you so much for everybody who's supporting. It's been crazy, but really, really fun to still play Season 5. For the side grade, let me know what you guys think would be a good fit for Lifeline, to have something that, yes, would still make her valuable at high level. Like, hey, if you can make this happen, if you can, let's look at a very simple version. She gets access to the respawn. Not the respawn beacons, the beacon, the Pathfinder beacons. She doesn't. I don't want that, but let's just put that as an example. Very small. A side grade would be something like that, where it's not directly impacting how good she is in a fight, but a Lifeline player who's smart, who's good in a competitive sense, would be able to use that and rotate faster with a coordinated team and be in better positions in late games, more so than other characters, which would allow the players who were good enough to take advantage of that to actually improve her win rate and feel that she contributes valuably to a high level scenario. So this is all really interesting stuff, guys. And good thing is, if you are watching this and maybe you learned something, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a like, comment down below what you think, what you learned, what you were interested in, maybe something I didn't mention, maybe something you want more clarity on. We could talk about it in other videos as well. And also, if you're hype about Lifeline getting something, go ahead and let me know in the comments as well. This has been fun to talk about because I don't always get to talk about situations I've come across in from my career back in playing and helping to create these esports leagues alongside these designers designers and looking at game balance and stuff. So it's really cool to have that opportunity to chat with you guys about stuff like this. This week, a lot more Apex, a lot more fun stuff happening. I've been going crazy, but hopefully you guys enjoy everything that's been coming on the channel in Season 5. And as always, never give up, never stop gaming. I'll see you all next time.